This is not a huge free agency season. I mean, obviously, we're used to summers where it's LeBron, where it's Kawhi, where it's Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, these huge named free agents. And for the most part, you just don't have that. You got Kawhi, he's the biggest name, but everyone expects him to re-sign with the Clippers, and I'm included in that party. Chris Paul, another big name, he's re-upped with the Suns at a huge number. 4 years, $120 million. And there were actually those that thought he might go to the Lakers for $9 million, $6 million.
Right.
I mean, come on.
But that was that Laker nonsense. That's what Rob G and those guys be thinking, like everybody's going to roll over just to play with the Lakers or whatever. But I just want to know one thing, Chris. When he signed that contract, did he have a ski mask on? That's what I want to know, Chris Paul.
Hey, I said that when his last contract with the Rockets, and hey, 4 years, 160 or whatever that was. He made good on that, even though he didn't win a championship, but he got another big one. We'll get to that later in the show. Some of the other signings, notable signings, Rob. Lonzo Ball is leaving New Orleans. A lot of people thought, I thought he'd be a nice fit with Zion, but apparently David Griffin had no love for Lonzo because he's sending packing. He's sending packing to the Chicago Bulls. In a sign and trade, and here's what the Pelicans get. Thomas Satoransky, who's awesome in Olympic play. He looked good for Czech Republic as they were getting demolished by Team USA this weekend. Garrett Temple, good citizen, high character, solid player, solid role player, and a second rounder. That's it. For Lonzo Ball, but Lonzo does get the 4 years, $86 million. We'll get into all that later as well.
I thought Lonzo was a number 2 pick, Chris.
No? Yeah, he was. Well, we gonna get all into his
journey.
His journey. That's a great way to put it. His ups and downs. Kyle Lowry signed and trade to Miami. He gets a 3-year deal with the Heat. Goran Dragic and Precious Achua will go from Miami to Toronto. Toronto, and Masai Ujiri's smart about this. He himself is Nigerian. He understands, Rob, get those international guys because a lot of times they're more apt to stay than some of the American guys. You know what I'm saying? It's an international city and they're international guys. So both of those guys, Dragic and Achua, international. Jimmy Butler is on the verge of signing a max extension to stay in Miami. Mike Conley, 3 years, $68 million. Some reports saying $72 million to the Utah Jazz. Tim Hardaway Jr. staying with the Mavericks. Smart move on their part. He's a shooter. Compliments Lonzo well. 4 years, $72 million for him. And then Jarrett Allen to the Cavs, or staying with the Cavs, for 5 years, $100 million, Rob. Duncan Robinson, 5 years, $90 million. Duncan Robinson started off his college career as a Division III player. So that warms my heart for all of us former Division III guys. He got 5 years, $90 million.
But the money's there. They got to pay it to somebody. Yep. You know what I mean? So if you're playing nowadays, can you imagine some of the former stars like a Isaiah Thomas who never made more than $3 or $4 million a year, looking at these guys going, are you effing crazy?
You're right,
seriously,
Rob.
Excuse my French. But seriously.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and obviously, look, the money they made back then.
No, it was a lot of money.
It was big, but it wasn't the equivalent of today's money. You know what I'm saying? It's not just, that's more than inflation. That's the growth of the game. You know what I'm saying?
It's the same thing, right? It's the same thing with if Hank Aaron was still alive and he sees Mookie Betts get 365, or you know what I mean, Tatis, before he even reaches arbitration, gets $300 million guaranteed. What would you pay Hank Aaron right now? You know what I mean? If he was in the middle of his career,
crazy, right? I was talking with Magic Johnson once, and he said, and he's close to $1 billionaire. I don't think he's there yet. But he said, he's like, I ain't make hardly anything playing basketball.
No.
I think he made 30 to 40 million.
And you remember it was that $25 million comp, 25 years, $1 million a year. Everybody thought, wow, Magic signed for $25 million. Dude, are you kidding? That's chump change.
It is amazing. It is amazing. And the Knicks, by the way, you talked about spending money. Rob G, I know they signed Alec Burks. Stuff is coming down so fast, it's hard to keep track. But they signed Alec Burks to a 3-year deal. And then they signed someone else. Rob G, get us that when you
Alec Burks, 3 years, $30 million. Nerlens Noel, 3 years, $32 million.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's not much money, so that's not bad. Like you said, Rob, you have to spend. There is actually a floor.
There's a floor.
Some people may not notice. Yeah, you got to spend a certain amount of money, but they're going to be wise with their cap and try to keep their room going forward. But Rob, let's get into this quickly. There's a story Ramona Shelburne wrote about Kawhi, and it was really about Russell Westbrook and how he ended up with the Lakers. But she had a story about how when Kawhi was a free agent a few years ago, and everybody was wondering, is he going Lakers, Clippers, Raptors, staying with the Raptors? Russell Westbrook, who was in OKC with Paul George, called Kawhi and said, hey, yo, I'm from LA, bruh. I'm willing to move on. Why don't we try to team up in LA? And Kawhi, after that call, this is according to her story, he called, instead of thinking about it, mulling it over, and maybe, trying to get Westbrook to be his co-star, he called Paul George and said, yo, I'd rather play with you. And that put the wheels in motion for the Paul George trade. And I want to ask you two things, Rob. Number one, did Kawhi do Westbrook dirty? And number two, did he pick the right star? Did he pick the right co-star? He could have co-starred with Westbrook. He chose to co-star with Paul George. Did he make the right move?
I think he made the right move. We saw Paul George this year finally blossom into the guy that we thought he could be when Kawhi got hurt in that Utah series. Most people didn't think they'd get out of that, and they did. He played big. He forced the Suns to a Game 6. Played big in a big closeout game in Phoenix. So I think he made the right decision, and I don't think he did him dirty. I just think...
Really?
Yeah, I think he reached out and he wasn't interested. I mean, I don't know, what does he owe him? Does he owe him something?
Yeah, the reason I feel like,
you know what I mean?
Look, I don't know.
He reached out and said, "Hey, I want to come play with you. That's nice, but I don't have to pick you or decide like."
Yeah, but I reach out to your teammate and say, "I'd rather play." Now, what she says is, "I'd rather play with you." Rob G, check that.
Okay,
right?
but I'm just saying.
Hold on, but let me finish my point. I'd rather play with you. So part of that conversation was, your boy called me because Paul George was all in on OKC. He was like, I'm staying here. I like the fishing. Me and Russ are great. Blah, blah. He was down to stay. Part of that conversation seemingly was, your boy called me and he wants to play with me. So it's almost saying he ready to leave you, Paul. And so I'd rather play with you. So that's where I think, he looking out for his best interest, but I think it was almost like, sound like it could have been snitching. Your boy wanted to come play with me.
The only way it would be is if you say, like, please don't share this with anybody, or, like you have to preface the conversation.
Yeah,
but if you're having a conversation, Chris, Max Kellerman called me and told me you want to do a show with him or whatever, and I'm just
I'm trying to think of the equivalent. Let's say that I called, let's use that, Max Kellerman.
Right.
And was like, yo, man, I hear you, you looking for a co-star. Right. I'm down. I'm ready to do it. And Max called you and was like, yo, your boy on the Odd Couple just called me and was like, I'm ready to work with you. But I'd rather work with you, Rob, Why don't you come on board with me? You don't think that? I think that's a little sketchy.
And I would have just said, well, Max, I think we would make a better team because you show up for work and you don't take that much time off.
You got nerve talking. You just coming off a week-long, 2 weeks vacation, whatever. But you know what I'm saying? I just think it's a little sketchy.
Okay.
But I do agree that he picked the right co-star just because Russ is just harder to play with.
He's a great
good.
Right, he's a great player.
Look, maybe they'd have gotten just as far. They could have at least gotten to the second round, with Westbrook, but it's just easier. It's an easier fit, I think, with Paul George than it is with Russ. So, yeah, I do think that's a better tandem than Westbrook and Kawhi would be. And look, Westbrook was with Durant for all those years, 8 or 9 years, and they never won the championship. Now, they did get far.
They got to the championship, yeah.
There's a misnomer. I will say this. There is a misnomer that you can't win with Russ.
Yeah, I don't feel that way. Just as time has gone on, I don't think he would be my first choice. That's all to team up with. It's more about that, Chris. It's not. They got to the championship. They won game one against LeBron and them.
He played in 4 conference finals. That's more than he's won more than Steve Nash did. And so, but it's a different way to play. And so it's a challenge. But